My name is Florence Hayes. I'm 36 years old, and until recently, I believed that if you built your life carefully enough, nothing truly collapsed without warning. I run a small plumbing business in Tampa, Florida. Service calls, water heaters, repipes, emergency leaks, a couple of small commercial accounts, if the timing lines up right. Nothing flashy, but steady. Last year, I made around $84,000 before taxes. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, and it worked. Marcus Hale is 32. Charming in that effortless way that makes people lean toward him without realizing it. The kind of man who doesn't walk into a room. He settles into it like he's always belonged there. People didn't question Marcus. They adjusted around him. We'd been together 7 years, living together for 4. The townhouse we rented was in my name. His credit was complicated. Mine wasn't. So I handled the lease. I paid the $2,180 rent every month. Electric, internet, both phone plans, car insurance, most of the groceries. About 14 months ago, I also paid off $6,700 of his credit card debt. I remember that night clearly. He sat at the kitchen table, shoulders slumped, voice breaking, as he said he just wanted a clean start for us, and I believed him. That matters, because after that, something shifted. Money stopped being something we managed together. And slowly, quietly, it became something he measured me with. At first, it was subtle. Marcus would show me videos, women talking about soft life, about how a real partner provides without being asked. He'd send me posts about boyfriends, surprising their girlfriends with luxury gifts, spontaneous trips, designer bags. I laughed it off in the beginning. Everyone watches nonsense online. But then it stopped being content and started becoming expectation. Dinner out wasn't just dinner anymore. It was a test. A birthday gift wasn't a gesture. It was proof. If I said no to something, even for a good reason, it wasn't practical. It wasn't responsible. It meant I was cheap, unromantic, that I didn't understand his value. 2 Saturdays ago, we had dinner with his ex-girlfriend Aubrey and her boyfriend Chase at a steakhouse near downtown. Nice place. Not somewhere I would have picked on my own, but Marcus said Aubrey wanted to celebrate a promotion. So we went. I paid for our side of the bill, just under $240 before tip. Dinner was fine. Conversation was easy enough. Until dessert. Aubrey lifted her wrist, smiling as she showed off a gold designer bracelet. Chase surprised me with it, she said, almost casually, but not really. Marcus smiled at the table. But I felt it. That shift. That quiet tension settling into his shoulders. That tight smile that meant something was coming later. The drive home was silent. Too silent. We stepped inside the townhouse, and the second the door closed behind us, he exhaled sharply. Must be nice, he said. I set my keys down slowly. Nice to what? He turned to look at me, arms crossed. Nice to be with someone who doesn't make you feel embarrassed in front of your ex. I blinked. I paid for dinner. We had a good night. What exactly was the problem? The problem, he said, voice tightening, is that Aubrey never has to ask. Chase just knows. He anticipates. He provides the lifestyle she deserves. That word, deserves. I felt something cold settle in my chest. He kept going. I've been looking at this designer tote for weeks, he added. $3,900. I just wanted to see if you'd step up and do something thoughtful for once. I stared at him. Are you seriously comparing our entire relationship to a bag? No, he said flatly. I'm comparing it to standards. Then he said it. If you can't afford me, Florence, maybe you should sleep on the couch. The room went very quiet. I could hear the hum of the air conditioner, the faint ticking of the kitchen clock. His heels clicked against the tile as he turned toward the kitchen, like he'd just won something. I watched him for a second. Are you sure that's what you want to say? I asked. He didn't even hesitate. Maybe a bad back will teach you what it feels like to disappoint someone every day. That was it. I didn't yell, didn't argue, didn't list the bills I paid or the debt I cleared or the things I'd quietly gone without so we could build something stable. I just said, okay. He blinked, like he hadn't expected the word to land that flat. Then he laughed. That small, dismissive laugh people use when they think they still control the room. He went upstairs, changed, grabbed his bag, and texted Aubrey from the hallway. A few minutes later, he was gone. At 8:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. Out late, staying with Aubrey. Don't wait up. I stared at the message for a moment. Then I typed back, no problem. And I meant it. Because something inside me had already gone quiet. Not broken, not emotional, just done. I picked up my phone and called my cousin Travis. He runs a small moving company. Do you have a truck free tonight? I asked. And a couple guys who want cash work? He didn't ask questions. Give me 30 minutes. From 9:30 to about 12:45, we moved everything I had bought before Marcus or paid for myself. The sectional, the rug, the TV, the bed frame and mattress, the dining table, the bar stools, my tool chests, the cookware set my mom gave me years before I ever met him, the washer and dryer, the patio furniture, even the couch he told me to sleep on. I was careful. I photographed every room before we touched anything. Every receipt I had was already scanned in my phone. I separated his belongings, clothes, shoes, personal items, and left them neatly in the guest room and closet. I didn't want confusion. I didn't want accusations. I wanted clean. I left an air mattress in the bedroom, a folding chair in the living room, 2 plates, 2 cups, 1 lamp, and enough food in the fridge for a few days. Not out of kindness. Just closure. On the kitchen counter, I left a note. Since I'm sleeping on the couch anyway, I figured I'd take mine. Rent is paid through the end of the month. After that, you'll need to make your own plans. At 1:08 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Still out. Don't be weird when I get back tomorrow. I didn't answer. At 1:41 a.m., he got home. At 1:43, my phone started ringing. By morning, I had 19 missed calls, 11 texts, and 3 voicemails. The first voicemail was pure screaming. The second was crying. The third was that controlled, polished voice people use when they realize rage isn't working and panic has to wear better clothes. Florence, call me back right now. We need to discuss what kind of breakdown you're having. I listened to that one twice. Not because I was hurt, because I was noticing the pattern. Even then, even after walking into an empty living room and a note on the counter, Marcus still needed the story to be that I was unstable, that I had snapped, that I was the one who had done something irrational. I waited until 8:30 a.m. to call him back. He answered on the first ring. Did you rob our house? He snapped, not even pretending to start calmly. I leaned against the counter in my mother's condo kitchen and stared out the window at the parking lot below. Palm trees shifting in the morning heat, a delivery van backing out. Ordinary things, steady things. No, I said, I moved my property. There was a sharp inhale on the other end. You cannot just strip a shared home because your feelings got hurt. I closed my eyes for a second. On my feelings, I repeated softly. Marcus, you told me if I couldn't afford you, I should sleep on the couch. I took that seriously. It was one sentence, he shot back. One sentence after a bad night. No, I said. It was 7 years of watching money become a weapon every time you wanted to feel powerful. That sentence was just the first honest one. That made him go quiet. Only for a second. Then I heard the pivot in his voice. Softer. Injured. Almost intimate. Florence, I didn't mean it like that. Of course not. He said Aubrey had gotten in his head. He said he'd been frustrated. He said couples fight, and normal people don't disappear in the middle of the night over one comment. Normal. That word almost made me laugh. Because there is nothing normal about being told your love has to keep proving itself in receipts. There's no disappearing, I said. The rent is paid through the 30th. After that, you can apply to stay there yourself or move out. I'm not coming back. Florence, I hung up. 10 minutes later, his mother called. Denise Hale. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Mostly because I wanted to hear how quickly his version had traveled. She didn't disappoint me. I need to understand what kind of cruel, humiliating stunt you think you're pulling, she said, voice already shaking with righteous fury. Marcus called me in tears. In tears. That detail sat in my chest like ice. I pictured him in the half-empty townhouse, hand to his forehead, voice breaking just enough to sound wounded. I could practically hear the performance. I moved what belongs to me, I said. You left him with nothing. I left him with his things. You trapped him financially. That phrase. I actually pulled the phone away from my ear for a second, then put it back. Excuse me? You heard me. You trapped him. You made him dependent on you, and the second he asked for more, you punished him. For a moment, I just stood there in silence, absorbing the sheer confidence of it. The way people could take years of facts and flatten them into whatever story preserved the person they loved. Respectfully, I said, I paid the rent, utilities, phones, insurance, and most of the groceries for 4 years. I also paid off his debt. That is not financial abuse. That is me refusing to be extorted in my own home. Denise gasped like I'd slapped her. Extorted is a disgusting word to use about the man you were supposed to love. Maybe, I said. Still accurate. Then I blocked her. Aubrey texted next. Real women don't humiliate their men over a joke. I stared at the screen for a long moment, reading it twice, letting the hypocrisy settle properly in my body. A joke. That was what it had become now. Not a cruel line meant to reduce me. Not a calculated test. A joke. I blocked her too. The only message that surprised me that day came from Marcus's father, Greg. Did he really say that? Just that. No accusation, no drama, no speech. I sent him a screenshot of Marcus's text from that night and a photo of the note I'd left on the counter. A minute later, Greg replied, I told him to stop playing house with money he doesn't have. I stared at that message longer than I should have, because it was the first thing that made the world feel sane again. That was the part nobody talks about when you're in a relationship like that. Not the yelling, not the ultimatums, the erosion of reality. The slow, steady way someone can make you feel unreasonable for reacting to exactly what they said, like you're unstable for bleeding where they cut you. That afternoon, a mutual friend named Kayla sent me a screenshot from Marcus's Facebook. Some women only love you when you accept less than you deserve. I looked at it for maybe 3 seconds, then locked my phone. No response, no correction, no defense. Because I was beginning to understand something important. The truth does not become stronger because you argue with a performance. Some people don't post for clarity. They post for witnesses. 2 days later, Marcus and his sister Mallory showed up at my mother's condo. They rang the bell for 5 straight minutes. Not normal ringing. Not polite. The kind that says, if I can't control you, I can at least force my presence through the walls. My mother opened the storm door, but not the main one. She stood there in house slippers and a loose gray cardigan, one hand on the frame, perfectly still. My mother is not loud. She doesn't need to be. She has that rare kind of calm that makes chaos look silly. What exactly do you want? She asked through the glass. Marcus looked wrecked in a very curated way. Hoodie, messy hair, sunglasses pushed on top of his head like he hadn't slept. Mallory stood beside him with her jaw set, already angry on his behalf. I want my furniture back, Marcus said. My mother didn't blink. He didn't steal his own furniture. Mallory stepped forward immediately, as if she'd been waiting for her cue. You can't just abandon a shared residence and strip it, she said. Do you understand how terrible this is going to look in court? My mother nodded once, almost thoughtfully. Okay. That seemed to throw them off for a second. Marcus pressed his palm against the glass. Mrs. Hayes, please, can you at least tell Florence to talk to me like an adult? I was standing just out of sight in the hallway, my arms crossed so tightly they hurt. There was something almost dizzying about hearing him say that after the way he had spoken to me in my own kitchen. My mother tilted her head. She is talking like an adult, she said. That's why you don't like it. Mallory tried another angle. Police, abandonment, judges, shared property, marital optics. Every sentence sounded rehearsed, like they had stayed up half the night building a vocabulary around entitlement and calling it fairness. My mother listened. Then she said, if you feel strongly about it, do what you think you need to do, and close the door. The silence after that was thick and almost holy. I stood there in the hallway, barefoot on cool tile, heart pounding harder than I wanted to admit. My mother turned to look at me. You okay? I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Yeah, I said, but that wasn't fully true. I was steady. I was clear. I was not okay. Because okay would have meant none of this surprised me anymore. And part of me still couldn't believe how fast love had changed costumes. 3 days after that, I got served divorce papers in the parking lot of a plumbing supply house. It was 92 degrees. I remember that because the heat hit like a wall when I stepped outside carrying a box of fittings, and then a man I'd never seen before said, Florence Hayes? I knew before he handed me the envelope. My stomach dropped anyway. I stood beside my truck and read the first few pages with sweat crawling down my spine and the sun glaring off the windshield. Marcus was asking for half the value of everything in the home. Temporary support of $1,100 a month, a share of my business account, legal fees, and reimbursement for emotional distress caused by reckless financial deprivation. I read that line twice, then a third time, and I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was so nakedly obvious now. This wasn't about repair, wasn't about regret, wasn't even about being hurt. It was about money. Money and punishment. Money and control. Money as revenge for the fact that, for once, I had not stayed in the room and defended myself until I was exhausted enough to hand it over. I folded the papers carefully, set the box in my truck bed, and got in behind the wheel. For a long second, I just sat there with both hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. I thought about the first year with Marcus, how easy he had felt then, how warm, how admired. I thought about the kitchen table where he had cried over debt. The vacations we didn't take because we were supposed to be rebuilding. The new work trailer I postponed buying because I wanted us to have an emergency cushion. The nights I lay awake, doing mental math, while he slept peacefully beside me. And I thought about that sentence. If you can't afford me, sleep on the couch. It sounded different now. Cleaner, less like an insult, more like a confession. Not of what I lacked, of what he believed love was for. I started the engine, pulled out of the parking lot, and called an attorney. Because once those papers hit my hands, I knew exactly what this had become. Not heartbreak. War. I hired an attorney 2 days later. Her name was Shannon Reyes. Calm, precise. The kind of woman who didn't raise her voice because she didn't need to. The first thing she said to me, after I finished explaining everything, was simple. Even when you're right, she said, folding her hands neatly on the desk, you still need documents. Feelings don't win cases. Paper does. I nodded. Good, I said. I have paper. And I did. Lease agreement in my name. Receipts for the sectional. The TV. The bed. The dining table. The washer and dryer. The patio furniture. My tool storage. Photos from my old apartment 3 years before Marcus, showing half of that same furniture already in place. Bank statements showing I paid nearly every major bill. Screenshots of texts. The moving invoice from Travis. The storage contract. Everything was there. Organized. Clear. Undeniable. For the first time since that night, I felt something close to control again. Not emotional control, but structural control, the kind built on facts, not reactions. Shannon flipped through the folder slowly, nodding once or twice. This is good, she said. Very good. I should have felt relieved. But that was the moment things got worse. Marcus didn't step back. He escalated. The first call came from one of my commercial clients, a property manager I'd worked with for almost 2 years. Florence, he said, voice careful in that way people use when they're trying not to offend but already halfway out the door. I just wanted to check in. We received a call from someone claiming to be your partner. My grip tightened on the phone. And, I asked? They said you were going through some kind of personal situation, that there might be issues with your billing, that we should be cautious moving forward. There it was. Not loud. Not explosive. Just a quiet, targeted cut at the place that mattered most. My billing is fine, I said evenly. I figured, he replied quickly, but we're going to hold off on the repipe job scheduled for Friday, just until things settle. $5,800. Gone. Not because I failed. Because someone decided to make my life unstable enough that it looked like failure. I ended the call and stared at my reflection in the dark screen of my phone. For a second, I felt something sharp rise in my chest. Anger. Not loud. Not explosive. Just focused. I forwarded the call log and email to Shannon. Her response came 15 minutes later. A formal letter was sent to Marcus that same afternoon. Cease and desist. Interference with business. Documented. Added to the case file. He didn't stop. He filed a police report 2 days later. Claimed I had stolen shared property. A grandmother's dining set that didn't exist. Jewelry that was still in his possession. I almost admired the audacity of it. Almost. 2 officers showed up at my mother's condo that evening. I invited them in. Calmly. No defensiveness, no attitude. Just facts. I handed them a folder. Walked them through everything. Receipts, photos, lease, inventory list, screenshots. Even ring camera footage from the townhouse showing Marcus entering the house after I left, with his own key. They listened, flipped pages, exchanged a glance. One of them nodded slowly and said exactly what I already knew. Civil matter. That was the end of that. But not the end of him. The next shift came during financial discovery. Shannon requested Marcus's disclosures. I didn't expect much. Maybe some exaggeration, maybe a few omissions. I was wrong. He had opened new debt, quietly, without saying a word. A $4,900 store card, a $3,200 personal loan, about $2,100 spread across buy now, pay later apps. Another credit card sitting at roughly $4,400, just under $14,600. Hidden. The statements told the story clearly. Boutique purchases, salon packages, a weekend in Miami with Aubrey, monthly payments on things I had never even seen. I sat at Shannon's desk, staring at the printed pages, and felt something strange settle in my chest. Not heartbreak. That was already gone. Something colder. Clarity. He had been calling me cheap. While quietly financing a life he couldn't afford, he had been measuring me, while hiding the fact that he was drowning. And somehow I had still been the one trying to build stability. That realization didn't hurt. It ended something. A few days later, Greg called me. His voice sounded older than I remembered. Tired. I'm not calling to get involved, he said. I'm calling because he's lying to everyone. I didn't interrupt. I told him to stop pushing you, Greg continued. To stop turning money into a game. He didn't listen. There was a pause. Then he added, quieter, I'm sending you something. A minute later, my phone buzzed. Screenshots. A family group chat I wasn't part of. Marcus's name at the top. One message stood out immediately. He'll cave like always. I just needed to scare her a little. I read it once. Then again, slowly, carefully. Like if I rushed it, I might misunderstand. But there was nothing to misunderstand. No nuance. No hidden meaning. Just control. Plain, unapologetic. I forwarded the screenshots to Shannon. For the first time since I met her, she almost smiled. This, she said, tapping the paper lightly, is useful. Marcus still didn't stop. His counteroffer came a week later. $28,000. 18 months of support at $900 a month. Half the emergency savings. A payout for loss of standard of living. I read it without reacting. Because by then, I understood something important. He wasn't negotiating. He was trying to recreate the same system. Pressure. Demand. Payment in exchange for peace. He even showed up at one of my job sites. Full makeup. Heels. White blouse. Like he was going to brunch instead of standing in the lobby of a commercial property surrounded by contractors in steel-toe boots. Reception called me. There's someone here asking for you, the woman said carefully. She says she's your partner. I closed my eyes for a second. Don't let him pass the desk, I said. I'll come down. I wanted witnesses. I stepped into the lobby and saw him immediately. Perfect posture. Tearful eyes. Composed chaos. The moment he saw me, the performance started. "Aw, you ruined my life over a purse," he said loudly, voice cracking just enough to carry. A couple of guys near the vending machines turned to look. I walked toward him slowly. "No," I said quietly. "You ruined your life because you thought I would stay scared." His expression snapped for half a second. Just a flicker. Then it came back. Anger this time. Sharp. Close. "Stop acting superior," he hissed under his breath. "All you have to do is send me $2,400 so I can catch up on the SUV. Then we can calm everything down." There it was. Again. Money in exchange for peace. The same structure. The same expectation. Just louder now. I looked at him for a long second. Not with anger. Not with sadness. With recognition. Then I turned to building security. "Please walk him out." His face changed again. This time, not into anger, into something uglier. Exposure. That night, Mallory called from a new number. "You're petty," she said immediately. "Cruel. Obsessed with winning." I leaned back against the couch and stared at the ceiling. "Knight, this was never about winning," I said. "It was about ending a system where every argument ended with my wallet open." She scoffed. Hung up. I blocked the number. And for the first time in months, I slept. Straight through the night. No mental calculations. No quiet anxiety about what the next request would be. No rehearsing explanations in my head. Just silence. And in that silence, I realized something else. Without the constant pressure to prove my worth financially, I had money left at the end of the month. Actual money. I wasn't drowning. I had never been drowning. I had just been carrying someone who wanted me to feel guilty for not carrying more. By the time mediation was scheduled, something inside me had completely shifted. Not hardened. Not closed. Just clear. Whatever this had been, whatever I thought it was at the beginning, it wasn't love anymore. Maybe it never had been. Because love doesn't need leverage. And it doesn't come with invoices. The divorce finalized a little over 3 months after that dinner. Mediation was the turning point. I remember walking into that room and seeing Marcus already seated across the table. For a second, it felt like stepping into a different version of him. He was dressed conservatively. Soft colors, hair pulled back neatly, no sharp edges, no tension in his posture. Even his expression had changed, subdued, almost fragile. If I hadn't known better, I might have believed it. That was the most unsettling part. Not the lies. The adaptability. The way he could reshape himself depending on the audience. His argument, when it started, was calm, measured. He said he had felt emotionally neglected, that he had spoken harshly in the heat of the moment, that I had overreacted in a way that destabilized him financially. He didn't raise his voice once, didn't accuse, didn't attack. He just positioned himself carefully inside a story where he was reasonable, and I was extreme. Shannon let him talk, didn't interrupt, didn't react. She just waited. Then when it was her turn, she opened the file, and everything changed. She started with the numbers. My income, his income, the rent, utilities, phone plans, insurance, groceries, the $6,700 in debt I had paid off for him. Line by line, she built the structure. Then came the percentages. 82%. That was what I had been covering every month for years. Marcus's expression didn't change at first, but his hands did. They tightened slightly on the edge of the table. Then she moved to their next section, the hidden debt. $14,600. Store cards, personal loans, installment apps, credit accounts, all opened without my knowledge. All active while he was calling me cheap, while he was measuring me, while he was asking for more. That was the first visible crack. His jaw shifted, barely, but enough. Then Shannon placed the screenshots on the table. Greg's messages, the group chat. He'll cave like always. I just needed to scare her a little. The room went quiet, not tense, not explosive, just still, because there was nothing left to interpret. No ambiguity, no misunderstanding, just intent. Clear, deliberate, controlled. From that point on, the version of events Marcus had built started to collapse. Not dramatically, not all at once, piece by piece. His claims about emotional neglect, countered with financial records. His accusations of instability, countered with documentation. His narrative of abandonment, countered with proof of sustained responsibility. Even the interference with my business came up. The calls, the pulled contract, the letter Shannon had sent, then the police report, false claims, non-existent items. Everything was there, structured, verified, real. By the time we reached the end of mediation, the room felt different. Not because anyone had raised their voice, because the truth had nowhere left to move. His demands started to fall away. First the alimony, then the share of my business, then the claims against my tools, my truck, my accounts. Even the inflated valuation of the furniture disappeared. What remained was small, real, final. The settlement was simple. Marcus received $6,500 from shared savings and tax return funds. He kept his personal belongings and the guest room furniture. I kept my business, my truck, my tools, my premarital assets, everything I had built. We each paid our own legal fees. When it was over, I didn't feel victorious. I felt quiet, like something loud had finally stopped. The total cost to me, between legal fees, the lost job, moving expenses, storage, and the security deposit I never got back, was just over $19,000. An expensive lesson, still cheaper than staying. Marcus moved in with Denise and Mallory. Last I heard, the SUV he had been so desperate about was refinanced in Denise's name because he couldn't qualify on his own. As for Aubrey, the bracelet, the one that started half of this. Apparently, Chase had bought it on store financing at a ridiculous interest rate, and they had been arguing about money ever since. That part made me laugh, more than it should have, because it wasn't really about them. It was about the pattern, the illusion, the performance of a life that looks expensive from the outside and unstable underneath. Me, I rented a one-bedroom in South Tampa. Nothing fancy. Clean. Quiet. Mine. I set it up exactly how I wanted. No negotiations. No silent expectations attached to every purchase. Just space. And for the first time in a long time, that space felt like peace. Work stabilized too. Not immediately, but steadily. I picked up 2 new maintenance accounts that replaced the one I lost. Without the constant drain, the constant pressure, I could think clearly again. Plan properly. Build instead of react. And yes, a few weeks after everything finalized, I started seeing someone. His name is Daniel, 37. Works as a physical therapist. Funny in a way that doesn't try too hard. Calm. Grounded. The first time we went out, I paid for dinner. He bought the movie tickets. No speech. No test. No invisible scoreboard tracking who had done more. Just normal. At first, that felt strange. Almost suspicious. Like I was waiting for the moment it would turn into something else. But it didn't. It just stayed simple. And I realized how unfamiliar that had become. The biggest thing I learned from all of this isn't complicated. It was never really about a purse, or a couch, or one cruel sentence in a kitchen. It was about power, about whether fear could control my wallet, whether shame could make me pay, whether love could be turned into an invoice. Because once money becomes the language of control in a relationship, the relationship is already ending. I don't mind providing. I mind being threatened. I don't mind generosity. I mind it being demanded like proof. He told me if I couldn't afford him, I should sleep on the couch. Turns out, I could afford peace just fine. I just had to stop paying for disrespect.